Hey there, welcome back to another exciting episode of James Teaches You How to Play Songs That Even He Can Barely Figure Out. Today we're going to be talking about Bottom of the River. As always, we're using our three-string Brokencaster today, tuned to drop B. So that's going to be B, F sharp, and B across three strings. Now, just throwing it out there before we jump into this, I have a massive fucking blister on the index finger of my picking hand. So I'm maybe a little sloppy here. So just bear with me a little bit. Promise I'll do my best to stay on beat and on rhythm and on point with this. So two things real quick before we jump into this. Number one, the arrangement for the intro. The first part of this song that I'm showing you is actually the third iteration of this intro. The first one was written in a guitar on a guitar in standard, and it used the low four strings. The next version of it was written on a six string in drop D that used the low five strings, so basically everything but the high E string. And the third version of it is my adaptation of the second version so that I can play it on my three-string guitar instead of having to pull out one of my six strings, because I really like this guitar and I want to keep using it, so I'm just finding excuses to keep using it. The second thing is going to be a little bit more difficult to get across in this video, and that is the rhythm that we're going to be using for most of the ending sections of the song. The second riff, the third riff, and the fourth riff all use kind of the same rhythmic device, where we're dropping the downbeat out of almost every bar. So the way that this is working, so we're gonna imagine the bar, and it's got eight divided into eight even eighth notes. So we're gonna slash that first one out completely, and we're gonna rest when we're playing that. So this creates kind of a off-kilter feeling to the riff, where it feels like, and the way that we're gonna feel this is it's almost like the very last note in that bar, the eighth note in that bar, carries over across into the beginning of the second bar. And you've probably heard this rhythmic device used in a million things. It comes up in a lot of southern hardcore music. It comes up in a lot of post-hardcore. It comes up in traditional hardcore punk a lot. It kind of creates that off-kilter, swung, almost bluesy feel. Sorry, that was a fucking giant seed pod that just attached itself to my hand. It creates this off-kilter, kind of bluesy, swung feeling, almost like a two-step, stompy, hardcore thing. It's a little difficult to get across with just the solo guitar without having a rhythm track behind me to show you like where I'm dropping that beat out. So I'll do my best to explain it as we get into it. So without further ado, let's jump right in and start working on Bottom of the River. The guitar parts in this song are very heavily influenced by La Dispute songs. It sounded like something that La Dispute would play to me. Thus the working title of the song sounds like something La Dispute would play. The name Bottom of the River is actually from one of their albums, At the Bottom of the River, Between Vega and Altair, which is a great album full of great songs, and you should definitely check it out if you're not familiar with it. Anyway, this is my homage to La Dispute, at least in guitar form. So the first thing that I need to do is I gotta dial in the kind of clean guitar part that goes into the beginning of this song. So when I'm playing this, I have it set to the first setting I have on my amp is actually for a clean channel, and then I've got a slight overdrive running into it, and with the gain set at about 60%. So it's got a little bit of dirt and grit and bite to it. Turn that down a little bit. So that way, as I pick harder into those notes, I'll get a little bit more of that grit and sustain and growl out of the distortion. I like having this set like this for the intro of this song because it allows me to be a little bit more dynamic with my playing, and I can ramp up the intensity of the distortion by just hitting the strings a little bit harder. A lot of what I'm doing in the first riff of the song, the intro riff, is based on, because at least in the 3-string arrangement for this, is based off of you're going to be doing a lot of hammer-ons and pull-offs on this this high string. In drop D, it would be your middle D string, the 4th string. In drop B, it's going to be tuned to a B. It's your 4th string on a 6-string guitar. So there's a lot of stuff going on that string, but it's a lot of hammer-ons. I like doing the hammer-ons because then I can pick out the notes that I specifically want to emphasize and bring them out a little bit more with the attack from the pick, rather than just hammering onto the strings with my fingers and not picking them at all. So let's go ahead and tackle the intro. It's 4 repetitions of the same kind of melodic device. Every time we play through it, each repetition, each iteration adds a little bit more to the structure, so that it gets more full and more busy as the song continues. So the bass pattern that you need to know is just. So what I'm doing there is I'm hitting the low B string, I'm picking the low B string, hitting an octave of it on the middle B string, and then I'm doing that hammer-on pattern starting at the 10th fret of this B string, pulling off to 7, pulling off to open, and then hammering on again at the 7th fret. So that's low. So we play that twice, and then there's a chord change. The chord change makes it a little bit more difficult because you have to root your middle finger at the 8th fret on that low B string, and then the hammer-on pattern you're doing on either side of that 8, the 10 and the 7. It's a little bit of a tricky movement, but it's not so bad. I managed to figure it out in a couple of minutes. It took me a couple of tries to get it right and get it clean when I was first coming up with it, but I'm pretty happy with it. It's pretty simple. It's not gonna trip you up too much. So the way that we're doing that is we're doing the exact same thing, but instead of hitting the low open string, we're hitting it fretted at the 8th fret. So the exact same melodic pattern. That's the meat and potatoes of the riff. We're going to be playing those 2 chords 4 times. And like I said, each time we play it, we're going to add a little bit more to it. So the first time playing through it, I'll show you how that goes. So that last little bit that I'm doing there is I'm just after I do the, I'm pulling off to the open string, and then I'm doing a hammer on. I'm hammering onto the 8th fret, and then I'm pulling off back to the 7. So. Cool. That's the first repetition. From there, we just go back to the open string. The second time we do this, we're going to add that little after the at the end of the 2nd and 4th bar. So that's going to sound like. Cool. So like I said, adding just a little bit more in there. not a whole lot. This part doesn't ever get crazy busy. It just adds a little bit more melodic melody or body to the melody as it continues. So the first time through, we're just doing that little tail at the end of the fourth bar. The second time through, we're doing that little tail at the end of the second and the fourth bar. The third time through is the same as the second, where we do that little tail at the end of the second and the fourth bar, but the tail at the end of the fourth bar is a little bit different. So instead of doing like we're used to, we're going to add one more note there, and it's going to be another hammer-on note. Instead of hammering onto the high B string here, the fourth string, like we're used to, we're going to be hammering onto the fifth string at the 8th fret. In drop B, I've got it tuned to F sharp. If you're playing along in drop D, it's going to be your A string. So the way that sounds is, so you're just doing that little minor yeah, it's a minor triad. That. And then from there, you're going back into the open. So, recap real quick. First repetition, doing the little tail at the end of the fourth bar. Second repetition, we do the tail at the end of the second bar and the fourth bar. Third repetition, we're doing the tail at the end of the second bar, and then we have the extended tail that goes at the end of the fourth bar. So altogether, that third repetition is going to sound like... I'm sure that comes across. The fourth repetition is where we're adding the most body to this. So we're actually going to be making we're going to be playing little tails at the end of every bar. The second and fourth bar are going to be the same as in that third repetition, where we're doing the, and then at the end of the fourth, the. At the end of both the first and third bars of the fourth repetition, we're going to be doing basically the same pattern, but we're going to be, instead of hammering back from the 8 to the 7, we're going to be going up from the 7 to the 8. And I'll show you how that works in context. So it's going to go. Oop, let me try that one more time, because I hit the 11 instead of the 10. So that's that entire section. Like I said, it's just based around the simple melody, and then we're gradually over the course of the repetitions adding a little bit more to it each time until we get to that final repetition where every bar we're doing the little accent notes at the end. I'll go ahead and I'll play that entire intro section, the first riff of the song, through for you from beginning to end, all 4 repetitions, so you can see how it kind of builds over the course of the riff. So that's going to sound like. entire intro section, the first riff of the song. For that one, I'm using a more clean guitar tone with just a little bit of overdrive over the top of it. That way, when I really dig in and I hit the picked notes instead of hammering them on, they have a little bit more clarity and bite to them. For the remaining 3 riffs of the song, we're going to a heavier tone, so I'm going to go ahead and dial that in right now. Please bear with me. Cool. That should be good. You should still be able to hear me and hear me over it. So I've got a little bit of a heavier tone dialed in here, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to tackle the remaining 3 sections of this song. Like I talked about very briefly in the beginning, we're going to be. This is where that the dropped down beat is gonna start coming in. So I'm gonna start using that rhythmic device. I'll try and show you with like head nods where the beat is supposed to land, so you can kind of see like how I'm bopping along to it and see how I'm hearing it in my head. But as far as like playing that track back to like playing it with a backing track so that you can actually hear how everything fits together, that's not going to be something I'm going to be able to do, at least not in this session. I want you to imagine just like we talked about, a bar of 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Snare on the 2 and the 4. So that 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're gonna pretend 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're gonna break that up a little bit further into 8. So that's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Cool. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So your snare is going to be landing on the 3 and on the 7. So it's in the same spot. We're just doing that bar in 8th notes instead of 4. Now I want you to while you're thinking about that rhythm in your head, I want you to drop the 1 out. So don't count it. Don't tap a bass note. So it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's the dropped down beat rhythm that I'm talking about. Obviously, I'm going to be playing it a lot faster than that beat. The BPM of this song, that riff actually goes. It's kind of got that shifty, off-kilter kind of feel. So think about that rhythm I just showed you, where we're dropping out that downbeat. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Kind of think about that and internalize that, and imagine that's what you're doing with this rhythm here. The riff itself is pretty simple. It's just 4 chords. I'm using 2 power chords and 2 triads, or not triads, dyads rather, because I'm really only playing 2 notes at a time. Sometimes I let the low open B creep into those notes just for a little bit of lower body, but it's not really necessary that you do that, and it's not a defining part of the chord. The chords themselves are actually voiced on the 4th and 5th strings respectively. If you're playing on a 6th string, for me it's the middle and the high string. So the first chord that we're going to do here is we're just doing a root 5th power chord at the 5th fret of the F sharp and high B string. So your 5th and 4th strings respectively. In drop D, they're going to be tuned to A and D. In drop B, they're going to be tuned to F sharp and B. One way or another, whatever chord you're actually playing or whatever tuning you're actually in, as long as you're relative to this, you're going to be in the ballpark. So we're going to play that power chord at the 5th and 7th fret, and we strum that note 7 times. We're dropping the downbeat, hitting the last 7/8 notes in that bar. Then it slides up to a minor dyad at the 8th fret. So we're playing that 8, 7 on the, we'll just call it the A and D strings moving forward, because it's going to be easier for me to relate them to the strings in drop D for y'all. I'm assuming you're probably not playing in drop B like I am right now. So the 8 and the 7th fret on the A and D strings respectively, not the low D, but the middle D. 8, 7, 8, 7. So that's that. It's a minor third voicing. Or no, I guess that's a major third voicing. And then we're gonna slide down to a minor third voicing at the 7th fret. So that's gonna be played 7/5. From there, it slides up to another power chord at the 10th fret. We're using 10 and 12 on the A and D strings. That's the last. That's the 4th chord. The way that this section goes is the one guitar plays that chord progression by itself twice, and then the whole band comes together and plays it 4 times. At least I think so. It might be 8. I have to look and see like exactly how I have the vocals laid out for that section of the song. I think it's 4 times. So altogether, that riff is going to sound like. It's pretty easy in and of itself. The next riff of the song, we're again gonna be doing that. We're gonna be dropping the downbeat. The pattern here that we're gonna be playing is 2 bars long instead of 1 bar, or 2 bars long instead of 1 bar long. So instead of just dropping the just playing those last 7 notes, we're actually gonna be dropping the downbeat after the first of a grouping of 2 bars. So it's going to drop in the alternate bars. So it'll drop from the first bar and then the 3rd bar, and then from the 5th bar and the 7th bar, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's a repeating pattern that I'm sure that you'll catch on to. Y'all are smart folks. I'm sure you got it. So again, we're going to be dropping that eighth note out, or that dropping that downbeat out, and in the 3rd riff of the song, I'm just playing a. This is again one of those. It's got a solo guitar that leads into the rest of the riff. The one guitar plays this pattern 4 times, and then the whole band comes in and plays it together another 4 times. And the pattern is this. Good stuff. So that's so that kind of like that's where the where that snare falls, and you can kind of hear where I'm eliminating that downbeat. That's where the gap in the mouth noises is. That's the one. That's the downbeat. So like it's felt as the downbeat, but there's nothing there. So it kind of gives that's what gives it that off kilter feel, because like when you're headbanging, like you go down into that space, but there's no sound there. Nothing happens, and it just kind of it feels like it bounces back. So that's why I'm using that rhythmic device. the idea that I'm trying to capture is just that bouncing feeling. So when I'm playing that, I kind of palm mute it at first. And then I like back off it. And then like those last 2 or 3 notes, I really like, or 3 or 4 notes really, I really like hammer and emphasize and do the up down and hit all 3 open strings at the same time. The second half of this riff is the exact same pattern, but like I said, it's the whole band playing it together. And instead of just doing the one single low, or the single note on the low string, it's kind of like halfway palm muted, but it's across like the low. It's across at the low 2 or 3 strings. When I pick those emphasized notes, I tend to drag all the way across all 3 strings. And when I'm doing like when I'm just playing the rest of the pattern, I tend to stay on the bottom 2. So that kind of sound that whole thing together is going to sound like. Good stuff. So the 4th repetition in the full band section, everybody just kind of hammers those last few notes because it goes straight into the last riff of the song, riff 4. This one is we're doing a lot of the same chord stuff that we were doing in the second riff, the verse riff. I kind of think of it as. But I'm throwing a little bit more variation in there. The pattern is a lot closer to what I was doing in the 3rd riff than it is the 4th riff, where I'm eliminating that downbeat from every other bar as opposed to every bar, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So musically, kind of the structure for the last section is moving up the minor scale to create this sense of building tension. So as I go further into the riff, I'm going to go further and further up the minor scale until I'm all the way up at the minor 7th. That's going to resolve up into an octave of the low chord. So that's the low chord that I'm doing is the power chord that we started the verse riff off with at 5/7 on the A and D string. And then I'm going all the way up to an octave of that power chord at the 17th and 19th frets on the A and D string. Obviously, you can play. If you're on a 6-string guitar, you've got a little bit more freedom as to where on the neck you want to voice this chord. I like the motion of just going all the way up the A and D strings until you hit that octave because it's got this cool like tension to it. And you can kind of like hear the timbre in the strings as you move your way up. There's a lot more like, it feels like there's more tension to the progression as opposed to if you were to move to one of the other strings where it's not as exaggerated of a movement, where it might be physically easier to play because you can kind of stay inside this box, but you don't get that movement all the way up the neck where you're physically cutting these strings like super short. It has a different tonality to it. I like playing it that way. Also, I only have 3 strings, so I couldn't go higher if I wanted to. I don't even have a spot on here where I could put another fucking tuning peg. Kind of SOL. So I'll show you that riff. I'm just gonna I'm gonna play through it one time, all the way through. There's kind of 3 different sections here. The second section is almost identical to the first section, except for the very last chord that we're playing. And then the 3rd section is like half the length of the preceding 2 sections. and it's more of like a tail that goes onto it, but it's the big climax where I'm finally hitting up to that octave. So yeah, like I said, I'll play the whole thing through for you, and then I'll break down what I'm doing so that you can see what is happening a little better. So that part goes. So that's the entire ending section of the song. Let's start at the beginning and work our way through it. The first chord that we're hitting is the same as the first chord from that verse, that 5/7 power chord. And then we strum that out for a bit, and then we slide up to the second chord that we were using in the verse, the major dyad shape at the 8th fret. So that's going to be 8/7 on the A and D strings. So that was fucking awful. Let me try that one more time. That was way better. And then we're going to slide down to the third chord that we used in the verse, the minor dyad shape at the 7th fret. And we're going to play that for like the full repetition. So one more time. That's cool. Then we're gonna go. We go back to this power chord here at the 5/7, and then we slide all the way up to the 13th fret, and we're gonna do another major third dyad shape at the 13th fret and the 12th fret of the A and D strings, respectively. So that chord. So that, and then from there, using that same rhythmic pattern as from that first part. We're gonna go up and then down again. So it starts here. And when we go down, we're going down to a power chord at the 10th fret. So that's gonna be 10, 12 on the A and D strings, respectively. So that little section all smushed together. That's the first repetition all together. Sounds like. Cool. The second repetition of that riff is almost exactly the same. The only difference is that last chord that we're doing. So instead of going from here down here to the power chord at the 10th and 12th fret, we're actually going from here, from this major triad at the 13th fret up to a different power chord at the 15th and 17th frets on the A and D string. So right here, I'm at a minor 7th of the root note of my scale, which is, you know, if you're tuned to drop B like me, that's the low B, or the octave of the B here or here. So I'm in B minor, and I'm literally just moving up the scale a little bit further every time I go up. So all together, with both of those sections together, it's going to sound like. So that's most of the third riff. The very last part of it, like I said, is just kind of a tail that goes on the end, but it is like the big climax of the song. It's where it resolves up to that octave, a full 2 octaves up from the lowest note of the song, that where we just were. So we're just going all the way up into this huge big open space, and that's kind of like, that's what I'm trying to evoke with that, or with this progression. So you can choose to play this however you want. When I play it on this guitar, I go all the way up to the 17th and 19th frets on the A and D string, or at least it would be the A and D string. If I was tuned to drop D, I'm tuned to drop B, so it's the F sharp and B strings. So that's a full that's an octave above here where I started, which is an octave above where I just was in the breakdown riff, the third riff of the song. So there's a lot of like harmonic motion in this song, even if it's all very simple. Like it's a very broad range, but the steps are very simplistic to move in between those places. So anyway, I'm just going all the way up to this octave of the chord at 17 and 19. I'm strumming that pattern out as hard as I can, dropping the eighth note from the first and third bars. I guess first, third, fifth, and seventh. In this case, it's an 8-bar pattern. So that sounds like. The last three notes of that chord, instead of playing up here at this octave, or double octave rather, I'm sliding all the way down, and I'm just playing all three open strings together for those last three notes, and then it ends hard on that big climax. So the outro, the outro from beginning to end, I'll play it for you one more time so you can see how it all kind of crams together. Fuck me. Let me do that one more time. Good stuff. All right, I'll see y'all next time. Thanks for hanging out with me.